Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt.
And I am Sir Jimmy the Infected. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today we are in the House of Dragons, Season 2, Episode 7. What is it? The Red Sewing? Is that what it's called? I can't remember the
Yeah,
episode
weird
name.
title.
Yeah, a
Weird
little weird.
title for this episode, Jimmy. So Jimmy, first of all, by the way, is ill. Okay. He's got the COVID, so you're gonna be hearing a lot of me today. But unfortunately, Jimmy wasn't here on Sunday, so he's gonna have to talk a little bit just about what you thought of the episode, where you're going. We didn't have as many Ravens this week, so we do still have some to dive into. So perhaps a shorter episode today, Jimmy. But what are your thoughts, man, on episode 7?
So I feel like in some ways it's almost a departure from what we've come to expect from penultimate episodes in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon as far as last season goes. Certainly not a bad episode. I really, really liked it. In fact, it almost did you feel like last week and this week is just like one really big episode? Because that's kind of how I felt. It felt like
I could
those.
agree with that.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, but it feels like the real climax has been saved for the last episode, which I guess if you think about um House of Dragon season 1, right? I guess episode 9 was the Green Council, episode 10 was the Black Council, and I think most people felt like episode 10 was the winner of those two, with episode 8 really being the biggest episode where Viserys dies. So
Sure.
I guess what I took away from this is like we have definitely moved away from that penultimate episode being the big one from Game of Thrones back in the day to now. I really do think that they're saving the final punches for the final episode of the season, which is totally cool. It's not that not big things happened in Game of Thrones on the last episode, but it seems like they're really saving it all for this episode 8. And I'm excited. I'm very excited. I like this episode. I thought it was really great. We still are feeling I think that maybe a bit of the struggle of trying to get every single person featured at least somewhat on an episode. But the way the episode was kind of structured was interesting. It was like you would have like a long 5 to 10 minute scene, and then you would almost have like, I almost call them interludes between, where it jumped between like 3 or 4 characters for just like 2 minutes a piece. And then we go into another long scene, maybe 10 to 15 minutes at this point. Again, little interludes jumping around. And at first, I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but upon thinking about it, I actually think that this is kind of a neat way of doing it. They're not including every single person, every single episode, but they are trying to fit in as much as possible. I think that part of this is us feeling the maybe just a bit shorter runtime, but also there's just so many people to include in these episodes. But by the end of it, I was really sold, and my wife was thrilled with Hugh the Hammer. She's
Yeah.
she was like, if you die, because she was confident that he was going to die because it's Game of Thrones. She was like, if Hugh dies trying to claim this dragon, I'm not watching the rest of the season. I was like, well, we'll have to see. And then whenever he claims a Vermithor, which is quite poetic, right? Lady Sarah's son, Sarah, who was just, kind of shoved to the side by Jaehaerys and disowned. I thought that was pretty poetic. Nice little add to the TV show there. But yeah, overall, I really, really liked this episode. I did watch it with like 101 temperature when my brain was melting.
So, I'm sure that affected you.
I was hallucinating as much as Damon was, possibly. The Harrenhal stuff. What did you think of that? All the River Lords? I thought that this was probably the best
great
stuff. Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I really liked this episode. Actually, according to our YouTube poll, which we've been keeping track of, it right now is the second highest rated episode of the season. Actually,
Nice.
according to behind episode 4, and then I think episode 1, you could make an argument. I have to really do the math. Might be the third highest, but yeah, 66% 5-star on our YouTube poll, 24% 4-star. So I mean, really, I mean, that's a huge swing in there. Everybody seemed to really love it. And I think a lot of it just came down to the ending, right? Where Vagar flying towards all the dragons sitting there, and basically all those dragons are being like, "Hey, bring it, you lumpy ass bitch!" Basically the way all those dragons sitting there staring at Vagar, being like, "Bring it." I did like the memes of, of of like the beginning shot with Rhaenyra and her dragon, and then Adam of Hall and Sea Smoke, right? Being like, "Hey, what's up, Sea Smoke?" You know, like,
Yeah.
like because those
Yeah.
dragons have been friends for a long time, right? Like they're not gonna fight each other, right? You know, they've
Oh,
been.
they were yapping back and forth too while they were trying to
Oh
talk.
yeah,
The dragons were just yapping. I mean,
and then
yeah, and
then they
that,
showed a
that's
shot of the dragons playing. You know, later. Remember they
yeah.
showed it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sentience was definitely hinted at here. We know that these dragons are way more conscious than it seems like most animals, at least. And it was interesting to see Aemon kind of struggle with Vagar a little bit. Vagar, no. Vagar, come on. Having to pull the strap, not listening intuitively like Rhaenys and Melee's had. Their great bond. This episode also, I know we had the review bomb on IMDb, but surprisingly, I was kind of shocked. This episode's at a 9 on IMDb
Yeah,
with
yeah.
quite a few votes. So maybe the review bombers have calmed down from two girls kissing. And it seems like this episode was a big hit. I mean, the one thing that this show has done extraordinarily well is when dragons are featured, I feel like they feel like monumental. I always just get Jurassic Park vibes. Is that what you get? I mean, like
Oh
that
yeah,
moment,
definitely.
when T-Rex leans down, it's the same thing with these dragons, and they're so distinct that I feel like they each have a personality, which I love it. It's not corny. Like it's not like talking animals. Like I've never been a big fan of talking animals in anything. But I don't know. I think they're doing a really nice job, and all the special effects, the hair being blown back when the dragon breathes, and Rhaenyra taking kind of charge of this unofficial ceremony. The whole thing was
It was
really
awesome.
cool. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I thought the shot of Rhaenyra standing there in front of Vermithor was freaking sweet. I mean, that's
Mhm.
right up. I mean, that's right up there with Daenerys in season 8. I mean,
Yeah.
regardless of whether people didn't like it, I think one of the fans still seemed to all pretty much be in. Like they use that shot a lot when talking about Daenerys, just because it's such a cool shot of her walking out and the wings behind her, which sort of makes her, of course, look like a dragon. Very cool
Mhm.
cinematography. And I thought that they did that, very well this episode. And it's one of the things I really praised about it. I think for me, this episode, you can tell that the winds, right? That the the
Mhm.
winds are changing, right? It feels like we're almost done with Harrenhal now. Okay, we've been wandering around Harrenhal. So I think that's something that caused fans to like a little bit more. Rhaenyra's finally taken some action, and we're
Mhm.
getting a little bit more of that. We got to see Aegon and his injury. So, it's been a slow build. We still, of course, are still building for next week's episode, which, you and I last week, actually, when you and I were done and we wanted to do a Patreon episode, which we're going to record right after this. We're going to
Mhm.
have to talk a little bit about the outline, because now where I see where they're at, some of the stuff has actually been a little ahead this season, and some of the stuff has been behind. Like the Dragon Seed stuff took way longer than it does in the books. Of course, it's an outline and it takes months, and we're just getting points in the outline. But like if you look at the outline, even if you go like the wiki, which I think does a great job of breaking down chapter by chapter, essentially the main points, which is kind of how it goes in Fire and Blood. Like Damon's at Harrenhal for like a year. It takes him a long time. So we're
Mhm.
way less time before he's done there. But the Dragon Seed stuff, whatever, like there's actually a couple battles that should have taken place. And I think next week, just looking at the preview, I think they're going to have 3 of these like battles take place at once. So I kind of think next week's going to be insane, because they've been building all this stuff and there's only one episode left. So like the Lannisters moving. Okay. Lannisters are moving into position to get ready to attack, right? We're hearing a little bit more about the blockade and, wanting to deal with that. And then there's another big battle that might have to take place going on in the Riverlands. And now we've got this army of dragons. What are we going to do with it? So I think they're literally going to be combining 3 things at once. And we'll talk spoilers about that in Patreon, as well as some of the previews, break down some of the preview, because I think they're changing / kind of defining a little bit more another big point that was a
Yeah.
little mysterious in the books. There was a couple. It's one of those things where an event takes place and Mushroom says one thing and somebody else says another thing. And now that I've seen the preview, I think something else is happening. So we'll dive into that more in Patreon as well. But yeah, so that seems to be kind of where we're at, is now we've set it up to have potentially like the biggest episode ever of all of Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire content.
Yeah, I think that it's the one thing that I can't seem to figure out though is like I remember whenever they talked about doing the 8 episodes, and George R. R. Martin said that him and Ryan Condell sat down and they decided to push off a battle till season 3. And I'm just wondering whether or not the next episode is really going to have a full battle, or are we going to be doing something where we like get the first half of a battle and a cliffhanger or a continuation,
Yeah.
or are we going to go all the way to where battle is beginning and then we cut and we cut and say season 3 next time? I think that would be a big mistake at this point. I think that one of the general senses that I feel from fans, which I've limited a lot of what I'm taking in as far as reactions go, but it seems like people really were expecting a bit more. And me and you said this actually, whenever we were talking about season 2 coming up. We said all the hard stuff's out of the way, the setup is there, it's time for war. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on, we're going to be flying by the seat of our pants. But to be honest, I mean, this season has been one battle, right, where we really see the power of a dragon and we see Rhaenys die. And then outside of that, it's been small skirmishes for the most part, like Blackwoods and Brackens, and watching Kristen Cole go out with Allison's brother, but like just not a ton of a big scale battles, which I think people were kind of expecting. So I think if they were to leave, and by the way, I'm fine with all that. I'm actually cool with the methodical pace. It's totally acceptable to me. I like these slower episodes usually. However, I think if they end this season 2 with the same idea that war is really coming this time, I could see people being a little bit upset with that. So I hope that we get some kind of blow off at the end. And if it is a mixture of like 3 different events that happen in Fire and Blood, maybe we get 2 of the 3 and the third one is the cliffhanger, right? Maybe of events that are happening in there. I think they're going to move some stuff around. And I definitely think that there's going to be changes from Fire and Blood, which I'm fine with. I don't necessarily mind, but I just think there's a lot riding on this last episode. But I think it probably is a good indicator that people are ready for it, considering the fact that the online reception for this episode has been pretty good.
Yeah. I agree. I think this next episode, I feel like it's going to be just crazy action packed. We'll have to see how it ends. I have an idea. And again, we'll talk about some of that spoilery stuff in Patreon, but let's dive into some of the stuff you guys sent us. So this one comes to us from Lady Susie, which is actually just kind of an interesting point, going back to the moment where Helena was staring at the cages, and it says there were 3 cages, and somebody and so she's sending us a thing that somebody else posted, and somebody else said, this was on Instagram, saying Vermithor, Silverwing, and Sea Smoke, they sing out to the riderless dragons to get them to come out. One stopped singing, Sea Smoke had then had a rider, and now there was the other 2, which could could be Vermithor and Silverwing, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that. There's been a few different interpretations of that scene, and I kind of put out the banners, call for the banner, saying somebody explain this, because I want to see what other people think, and I think this is like the 3rd or 4th interpretation of this. So clearly, it could mean a lot of different things, and maybe we'll never really know exactly what it's supposed to. Maybe on rewatch we'll figure it out, but I kind of like this interpretation maybe the most.
Yeah. I agree. I think to me that's something that makes sense, and I think it's kind of cool. Again, all the Helena stuff is so difficult because some of the stuff may not come for like a season or 2, right? So we don't know, but so far everything she says you need to pay attention to.
Definitely.
Here we go. This is from Juan Carlos, who says Juan Carlos the Advocate, he calls himself, right? So he says episode 7, mixed feelings. Says, hey guys, I hope that you are doing well and that Jimmy is hanging in okay with all of his work travel woes. So now he has COVID, so I guess not, right? So I'm seeing a lot of love for episode 7, and that's fair, but I gotta be honest with you guys, this was probably my least favorite episode of the season. This is just my opinion, but I felt that there was a lot of screen time being dedicated to not much going on. This is the 3rd time Daemon has had a Viserys vision, and it didn't really add much to his redemption arc. Alicent goes swimming, and in my opinion, unnecessary scene. Although we were already aware of Sheepstealer being in the Vale, we cut back to Rhaena in the Vale, despite that scene not really adding much to the narrative. From a more subjective personal perspective, I also found the red sewing scene to be rather lackluster. Now, I admit that this mainly comes down to my own interpretation of what I expected from Fire and Blood, but seeing a bunch of innocent people getting burned alive by Vermithor didn't have the same effect for me as it would be a dragon riders trying to claim him via a montage of attempts, which is actually what I kind of thought it was going to do. And I thought that would actually be somewhat of a way to do like comedy, being like, just somebody going up and then just getting eaten, being like, well, who's next? And, but they chose chaos instead, which now that I've seen the way Hugh the Hammer does it, I think I actually kind of, you could have gone either way with it, but I feel like it did sort of make Hugh the Hammer stand out to be way more cool.
It was a dope moment, and I think a quip would have taken away from that possibly.
Yeah. So it's just, I get it, because that is how I thought it was going to go as well. As I thought it was going to be almost like, in a way, a little more comedic. Like, no, that's not, because especially when you see the first guy walk up, you're like, there's no way. Like, this guy has no shot. I mean, we know because we're book readers, right? We know who actually claims the dragons, but they did still actually get a little bit of comedy in there with it, with Ulf and Sea Smoke, where Sea Smoke actually chose him too, which was kind of, or not Sea Smoke, Silverwood, excuse me, chose him. And then you see him flying over. It's like, hey guys, I got a dragon now, so just letting you know.
Yeah, I think Ulf has actually been a pretty great addition to the show. Like, we're talking about splitting time, and this is kind of what Juan Carlos is talking about. Ulf is one of those people that I'm really glad we got those scenes earlier in the season that some people thought were pointless or like, we don't need this. But seeing him this episode, I feel like it really pays off all the building that we've had from him.
Yeah. Okay. He goes on to continue and he says, I understand Ryan Condell probably couldn't follow the book more closely due to budgetary constraints, but the whole sequence felt rather lacking, in my opinion. I also question the ending scene. How did Rhaenyra know to stand outside of Dragonstone with all the other dragon riders in order to wait for the arriving Ulf, other than to look cool for camera? I know it sounds like I'm nitpicking, and I have no problem with people enjoying something I didn't, but so many moments from the episode took me out of the show, and I'm just not seeing the hype for it. I personally gave it a 5 out of 10.
I mean, well, obviously we love hearing everyone's perspective stuff. I think he brings up some interesting points. I think Rhaenyra being outside is not that far of a stretch. Like, that's not, I don't find that.
Yeah, I guess I would just imagine that you hear the dragons would be rumbling and be like, okay, and then people would say that they see his dragon coming, and then they see Vermithor, or then they see Vhagar, coming. So I would imagine the whole thing that we didn't see on screen is probably pretty chaotic, and so she goes out to get ready, because who knows what dragon's coming, and then it ends up being
or so just looking for Ulf.
Just
like,
cool
where did he go? Where did our dragon and our new dragon rider go? Did he defect? I mean, I don't think it takes that much logic or takes that much time to find logic behind it. I don't think it's that bad, and it is a great scene. And after all, it is entertainment. So I don't that part loses me a bit. But like the Rhaena, right, in the Vale scene. Remember when I was talking about how the episode was structured? Like, it felt like little interludes between the big scenes. This is one of those things, and I completely agree that could feel odd. I don't necessarily disagree. I think the pacing of the season has been odd in many instances. As far as the dragon claiming scene, I don't know. I loved it. I felt it. I was on the edge of my seat, even knowing who claims what dragon. Like, I was very much into it. So I don't know if I can relate to that. What was the other point other than the Rhaena one? There was another. Alicent. So this is the one thing that from the episode that I did feel. And Matt, me and you have talked about this. Alicent doesn't have a lot to do in Fire and Blood after where we are. And this is one of those weird things where, like, Olivia Cook is one of the main actresses, and clearly they want to keep playing with her and Rhaenyra's dynamic that has been built since season 1, which I don't think is necessarily a bad through line to focus on. But I mean, this episode was obviously like a transformation for her. Ron Condell talked about this in his little post episode interview, and I see what they were doing, but we're gonna. My opinion remains, free. I don't know where I lie on this yet, because they're clearly going to give her more to do, because she's a featured actress. But they
built the whole build up for it is that it's really a war between Alicent and Rhaenyra.
Yes. So this is one of those things where it's like, okay, I have to see where this ends to judge this scene. In the context of just this episode, it wasn't my favorite. Same thing with Reyna and the veil stuff. But like, let's see where this goes. Right.
Yeah.
Let's see how this ends up. Allison is one of the biggest question marks continuing on into season 3. Like, I have no idea what they're really going
Yeah.
to do with her outside of the few notes we have from Fire and
Yeah.
Blood.
I think
think she's going to be
I
more
do.
important.
I think I do, and again, it's spoiler, so we'll talk about it in Patreon. But yeah, but actually, Lady Adrian, who's been on the show before and stuff like that, she sent us a little thing about it, saying, "I'm listening to last night's episode and your discussion on Alice. It reminded me when her scenes were last night. This was, to us Monday. Saying I kept thinking of the painting of Ophelia drowning. Ophelia, the character in Hamlet. Maybe there are some allusions there. Invoking that image seemed pretty intentional. It's never over in the play, but it is assumed Ophelia commits suicide. Hamlet tells her to get thee to a nunnery, which is basically what Aemon tells her. You don't belong within the sphere of men. So
Oh,
yeah,
yes. This
yeah,
is 100% a parallel. George loves Shakespeare. And I think Ryan Condell probably through extension probably looks to Shakespeare maybe for some inspiration. I mean, the man invented the word elbow for God's sakes. I love this. Lady Adrian's always so good at some of the historical references. She had a big theory back in the day about Anne Boleyn being Marjorie
mhm.
Tyrell and how the neck is described just as Anne Boleyn's is whenever she gets her head chopped off. So very interesting stuff here, and I think she's spot on. I think that that's most likely a parallel that the show would love for us to draw from it.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. Okay, well, I'm going to pull up some of the comments from YouTube here. So this is from the poll itself. Logan says, Hugh the Hammer screaming fearlessly in Vermithor's face was fucking epic. Yeah, I
So
think that's going
good.
to go down as one of the coolest moments of all of House of the Dragon. Brad says the episode flew by. Loved the Harrenhal scene. Great resolution to the conflict for Daemon. Yeah, what do you think about that, Jimmy? He kind of went against, had to betray
Ru-
his sort of
Hey,
betrays his vows there. Yeah.
ruling is very hard and that crown is heavy. And that scene with Viserys that I haven't got to talk about yet. Oh my goodness. I loved it. I loved the choice of him being in his decayed state with the crown. Daemon seeing what it had done to his brother and how he did not want it, and Daemon also wanting it, and for that to come with that decision that he had to make this episode was really good. Really, that's why I said I think this is probably the best the Harrenhal stuff has been.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been, honestly, I think it's, the Harrenhal stuff has, I mean, oh, I got to pull up on the wrong thing here. Yeah, it's been hit or miss, honestly, because it's so now
Yeah,
it's just kind of like dragging on, and so now that we finally get a little bit of action in Harrenhal, I think is a good thing. So
yeah.
some other people here. Let's see here. Great episode, second best of the season so far. Can't wait for the finale. Lady Shannon says that was an awesome ride. Vegarian says loved it, but the most exciting part of the episode for me was the eight preview. All right, episode 8 preview. Rhaenyra standing with Vermithor, my man. Dragon Seed Carnage was epic. Lady Joy says, freaking great episode. Yes, I mean, a lot of people just really loved it, except for somebody from the Sith here who said it was effing crap and boring. So, that's just spam bot or something, I mean, the Sith. I brought Ez on for the episode, which he's a Star Wars guy, and this immediately bring on Saz and the Sith start infiltrating here. So I think
Coincidence? I
that was
think
a
not.
coincidence. Yeah, man. Finally, some dragons. I think that could be the argument for us. People have been waiting for that. Now we got to see all of them.
Yeah, dude. I think, like I said, the dragon stuff for me just was an absolute slam dunk. It had all of the weight behind it that I wanted. That gravitas of a dragon's presence was there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess any closing thoughts, Jamie? Because we didn't get as many Ravens this week. I think everyone was just kind of like in that same mood where they're just sitting there ready for, everybody's ready for the next episode, man.
Lot of payoff for some of the setup that's been happening throughout this season. I have a feeling that when you and I go back and rewatch, that this episode will hit even harder. But I also think that this season will be a little bit more of an ironed out process once we rewatch before season 3. But hey, it's a setup. They did a really nice job with this episode, and now they need to hit the home. They got to get on base with this final episode. I think it's going to be very telling how season 3's reception will be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the next episode, just from what I've seen from the preview and just judging by what I know happens in the books, I have a feeling it's just going to be a slam dunk. I just kind of feel they're just going to cram so much into this episode. And yeah, Jimmy and I are going to talk about it in Patreon, which, you know, so we can go spoiler heavy and talk a little bit about the outline. Because man, we know there's some things we know about it. If you watch the preview, we know Craig and Stark is going to be in it. So yeah, expect some big battles next week. So all right. Well, hey, with that, guys, as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember that winter is coming.